I want you to think about who you are when you're alone. You're not making content. You're not calling a friend for an opinion or for validation. You're not proving yourself to anybody around you. There is a way we behave when no one is there to see us. And I would bet my entire savings account, which isn't much, okay, but it means a lot to me. I would bet my whole savings account that it is different than how you show up when there's people around. Not even necessarily people like your friends and family or your significant other, but also just people in the world, like when you walk into a grocery store or when you're driving in your car and suddenly you have to like compete with the asshole driver next to you. There is a way you show up when you're alone with no outside stimuli, and there's a way that you show up in the world with all the stimuli. Now, I know what you're thinking. You think I'm going to tell you that the most authentic version of you is who exists when you're alone. But you'd be wrong. I'm not going to tell you that. Surprise, I'm throwing you for a loop. The most authentic version of you lives in the gap of those two people. This month on Wellish, we're talking about the story we tell ourselves, how we express ourselves out in the world, and intentionally authoring the narrative that we tell ourselves allows us to shape who we want to actually become. So today, that's what we're focusing on. We're focusing on that gap between who we are when we're alone and who we are when we're out in the real world. There is space between your inner voice and your presented identity. And in order to really get familiar with who you are, in order to become the version of yourself that you want to become, you have to get really honest with yourself about that space. And the only way to get really honest with yourself in order to present yourself authentically in any setting that you're in order to become the person that you so badly picture in your head of wanting to become, is to first get honest with yourself in private, to get to know yourself in private. And then it will translate to your authentic self out in the world. You don't want to be anxious anymore. You don't want to be awkward anymore. You don't want to get attached to people and places that don't attach back to you anymore. You want to show up confident. You want to be the desired version of you that you picture in your head. You want to be that version of you, the dream version of you. You have to get familiar with this gap. So let's explore it. Make sure to do right by your Wellish besties and rate and review the show. It really helps push the show out to like-minded people like you and I who need to live a little bit more Wellishly. And make sure to do right by yourself as well and subscribe to the show so you don't miss an episode of Wellish. You can also get little Wellish tidbits throughout your week by following my Instagram and TikTok. Both of those are at Wellish Podcasts, where I post lots of self-improvement tips for imperfect people. And then, of course, you can follow my personal Instagram at sarah.rittendale to see Wellish lifestyle. So let's figure out how much of your expression is curated versus real, because a lot of us do have a pretty curated expression subconsciously, like without even realizing that that's what we're presenting to the world, because social media and our culture reward this performative identity so much. If you fit inside social norms, everybody stays comfortable. You know, like when you leave the box, when you don't do what is anticipated or expected, that's when people start to talk shit or start to say weird comments or do weird things because you're not remaining palatable. And to prevent the fear of not being palatable, we all follow the same social script. When people show flaws or contradictions, it's risky because you feel like you could be rejected or misunderstood. So it's safer to just do what's expected of you. And what's expected of us is this version of perfection. If we strive for this presented perfect identity, it limits our chances of being rejected or judged or perceived. And being perceived well reaps reward. You get opportunities to have friends, to date, to have your parents like you, to have your boss like you. It allows you to feel like you have better status, because if you're perceived as well as possible, as good as possible, as perfect as possible, then you'll be at like the top of the food chain, for lack of better word. It allows us to feel a sense of belonging because Because if we all fall inside the same social script, then we belong in a solid group of people that don't judge us and accept us for who we are, quote unquote. Where if you branch out on your own in your own unique self, unique meaning you're one of a kind meaning there's just you and you won't be, it feels as though you won't be accepted by a community of people. That's terrifying. It's basically like, it's kind of crazy. Like, we're basically all in a bigger scale version of high school. Like, being popular in high school is the goal. We're still following that same mentality. Like, if you think you dropped that mentality at the graduation steps, you're wrong. But now, because it's such a bigger scale, there's so much more to live up to, therefore so much more to be perfect about. A good home, more money, the right relationship, all of the friends, going to the events, having a good wardrobe. I mean, the list goes on, and we are so much more subjected to it now because we are inundated with people all over the world, people that we used to know. So there's a lot riding on this curated perfect identity. I had this realization that just blows my mind. We have this idea in our head that our identity is supposed to be managed, not lived. Like, our identity is who we live as, it's who we show up as, it's who we are. But we always feel like we have to manage how we show up and what we're doing, and it's too much. And the perfectionism is reinforced through the messaging of you're not cool enough, you're not confident enough, you're not desirable enough unless you. When you just accept that you're good enough as you are and allow yourself to just exist, and you're not proving yourself to everybody and showboating yourself to everybody, not saying that you do it in a showboaty, shoving yourself down people's throat way, but just having that mentality, feeling that you need to perform and curate your identity. And the only point in doing that is so that other people can see it. So when you just accept that you're yourself and you can just exist, you feel less visible. And with less visibility, you then feel less validated in the collective. And then you have to go back to the good enough wound stuff. Because if you need the collective validation in order to feel you're good enough, then you got to start back from square one. And it's just this vicious cycle. But by curating this perfect identity, by saying, okay, I'm going to take this piece and this piece from here and this piece from here, and I'm going to put it into my identity and make it who I am and who I show up as, it makes us feel like we're in control. When you don't know where your life is going, when you don't know who you are, when you don't understand yourself, when you don't know what's happening, it makes you feel like you're managing what's happening. It makes it feel more predictable and makes you therefore feel more safe. Let's talk about what this looks like in real life. We talk about highlight reels that we see on social media and how all we see are people's highs. We never see anybody's lows, and it makes us compare our lows to their highs and as though we're inadequate. That's an old song and dance. We all know what that means. But what we don't talk about is the way highlight reels exist in real life. We go out into the world and do our absolute best to show face, to show our highlight reels. So our friends, our family, whoever we're spending the most time with, we are still seeing their highlight reels. We're not seeing them at home by themselves. And when I say highlight reels, I don't mean you're happy out in public and sad at home. While that could be true, I just mean that you're showing face. You're having more energy. You're being a curated version of you out in public compared to when you're at home and there's nobody to prove anything to subconsciously, just by default. Think about when you go out and you put on a nice outfit compared to when you're at home and you just kind of wear whatever around the house. Doesn't really matter. It doesn't necessarily mean you look like a slob, but maybe it's not the t-shirt that makes you feel like $1,000,000. It's just like whatever t-shirt you've had in your drawer since college. Think about your energy level when you're out with your friends. You're laughing, you're having fun, you're drinking, you're eating, you're experiencing something compared to your energy level when you're just at home. Again, not saying that it's good versus bad, just that your energy level is just more calm. It's just more collected. It's just more matter of fact, whatever it looks like for you, more grounded, whatever it looks like for you. It's different because you don't have that outside stimuli energizing you. Or think about when you're in a relationship and you're out with your significant other doing cutesy things. Maybe you're going to a cute little fall fest. Maybe you're giggling and eating off of each other's spoons out at the restaurant. Maybe you're dancing together at the bar compared to when you're at home or just with the two of you and you're just existing comfortably together. Once again, not good or bad. I'm not saying when you're out in public, you're doing cutesy things, and when you're at home, you're actually like fighting and not ignoring each other. I'm saying that there's a difference between when the two of you are just the two of you existing comfortably together and when the two of you are out experiencing something together and spending time together. There is a difference in how you show up. Now, you can think of all of this for yourself, so think about what you perceive in other people. Think about your friends who you think have this cool life that you're so jealous of. Think about that girl that just walked past you on the street that looks so good. Why do my outfits never look like that? Why does my wardrobe never look like that? Think about the cute couple that just walked past you giggling on the street, wondering why the fuck you can't have that. If you're anything like me, and likely you are, and that's why you're here, you've definitely heard you're too hard on yourself enough in your life. And if you're someone that's too hard on themselves, the gap between the highlight reel and the backstage self is very large, and you're not paying enough attention to the authentic self that lives in that gap. So, to recognize where in your life you're doing this, start thinking of self as narrative. There is a story you tell yourself inside of your head, and there is a story you actually live in real life. When you start thinking of self as narrative, you start to align the version of you that lives in your head and the version of you that lives in the real world. And you can start actually living as the person that you genuinely want to be. This can show up in a bunch of different ways. For me, when I think about how my voice shifts dependent on who's watching or listening, I think of feeling anxious but showing up confident. Or I think of feeling like I need to be a ball of energy and say and do all of the right things when really I'm pretty chill and laid back and don't have anything to contribute at this moment, but suddenly I feel like I have to fill the space, feeling like I have to be extroverted because society tells us that the extroverts are who get the most out of life, when in reality, I'm pretty introverted. Or one of my favorite realizations is feeling like I need to show up unbothered when really I'm actually extremely bothered. I want you to intentionally reflect on where you might be doing this, because I think a lot of the time we think like, okay, maybe I'm doing that, but it's not as bad as we think it is. And one of my favorite examples that I've seen recently, like in the last couple days since I've been paying attention to this, I'm reading a smut book. It's called Birthday Girl. It's really good. I highly recommend. But it's one of those books that is multiple POVs. So I get his and her POV. And the way that they both self-deprecate and don't realize how the other one feels is crazy to me. And it just really highlights this for me, that we think one thing in our head and we live a way out in real life. And it's bizarre. And we do it, I think, a lot more than we realize. So in order to highlight that for us, because we have to become aware of it and acknowledge it and take accountability for it in order to understand ourselves better, and then start to live more authentically by living in that gap of who we are alone versus who we are out in the world. So a couple things that I want you to reflect on to see if you are doing this are: what parts of you only exist in private? What are you afraid would happen if people saw them? And what stories are you editing out of your public self? Okay, got it. Glad we pointed that out. That's definitely me, but what do I do about it? How do I make this better? You have to start in private. That's the number one most important thing that you have to know, is you have to do this alone before you can show up in the world as the version of you that you genuinely want to be. So I'm going to help you reclaim solitude and imperfection as prerequisites for that authentic identity, okay? Because when you are out in the world, there's too much stimuli. There's too much going on that there is literally no shot in hell that you could try to manage this better. It prevents us from having a fair shot at authentic self-expression, and privacy gives expression oxygen. When we take advantage of the time we're alone to gain a deeper understanding of our thoughts, our feelings, our beliefs, and how we respond to those thoughts, feelings, and beliefs, we become more capable of expressing them out in the world because we're more familiar with them when we're alone. When we get clear there, you'll start showing up in a way that's more authentic to you, more in alignment with the version of yourself that you want to show up as compared to the version of you that you've been showing up as. It's kind of a funny paradox because in order to express yourself truthfully, you need to first give yourself the space to express yourself without being seen so that eventually you can show up in the world and be seen in the most authentic way to you. And when you start to show up authentically, everything falls into place and you start to show up as the version of you you've always wanted to. So, how do you get connected to your inner narrator? One of my favorite ways that you guys know good and well is one of my favorites is journaling. I recommend journaling 3 pages at minimum because once you get about a page, page and a half into journaling, you have to start forcing yourself to coming up with things to write. Just spitting whatever pops into your head, whatever crazy random thoughts pop into your head, writing those down on the piece of paper, and you learn so much about yourself and how you think and how you feel and how you believe and how you operate just from pushing yourself to write more than you have to say. Because for that first page and a half, you're writing what you think you should. And then after that is when you get all of the good stuff that starts coming out that helps you learn more about you. Another way is in solitude. You get to know yourself really damn well when you're alone, when you spend a good amount of time by yourself. That's likely why breakup glow ups are such a thing because the more time you spend alone, the more time you have to validate yourself and be there for yourself and know how you operate, know your routines, and you get to know what you like and dislike because the only person there to judge it is you. There's nobody else to put in their 2 cents to influence your decision. Your decisions are 100% yours because there's nothing else influencing you. And lastly, stillness, thinking about meditation. You don't necessarily have to meditate. It could be anything that's meditative to you. Like a good example that I like to use, which is totally not me, but I just think it's a really good example, is fishing. Like that you are standing there waiting for something to bite. You are meditating. Maybe you go and you sit in the park and you don't have any of your protection materials like your phone or a book. You just are sitting there in stillness. What thoughts are popping into your head? How are you dealing with those thoughts? What does that make you feel? What do you think about your life? What are you perceiving from the world that's happening around you? And what's your genuine opinion about that when there's no one there to judge you about those opinions or put in their 2 cents of what your opinion should be? Once you start to get familiar with who you are in private, you can then start transitioning to who you are in public because naturally, we're not monks. You're not going to go spend all of this time in solitude and stillness journaling. You're going to have to be subject to the outside world, sometimes likely daily. So, taking the intentional time to do those things and then using the outside world when it's less important as a safe rehearsal space for the things that you took intentional time to learn about you. So, like when you're at work or when you're talking to a customer that doesn't matter, or when you're with your friends in a casual setting that the stakes are low, when you're with your family, maybe with people that you know love you unconditionally is a good place to practice. But creating this intentional, safe rehearsal place to start leaning into what it would be like to show up as the person that you are when you're alone and away from who you think you should show up as. And the more you practice in this safe rehearsal space, when it does matter, when you're in situations that you want to show up authentically, when you want to show face, when you start to feel anxiety or whatever inside feeling is happening, you'll have this system to fall back on. You'll be familiar enough with this that it will just naturally come out. It's really important that we stop curating vulnerability that feels real enough to connect, but safe enough to control. It's not real. It's not real. You're not genuinely connecting with people that way. You genuinely connect with people through imperfection, through messy stuff. Imperfection is what creates genuine depth. Honesty and transparency are magnetic. They create connection with other people. When people don't get everything right, that's when we start to see them as real people that could play real roles in our lives because imperfection makes identity believable. And if you can't believe that about yourself, think about the other people in your life. I can absolutely think of friends that I've had that have opened up and cried. Like I'm picturing a drunk cry night, okay? Like I'm picturing suddenly somebody said something and somebody's triggered and now we're upset in the bathroom. And I think of the person that I've never seen anything wrong happen to. Everything is seemingly great with them. You know that there's probably more there that they're not letting on, but they've really created this image that everything is good and well and they handle things well. And you feel like maybe kind of jealous of them because they've curated such a good image of what a perfect life is, but they just aren't a real person in your life. You're not as close with that person as you are than you are with the bitch that cries in the bathroom about whatever. When people open up about their imperfection, when they open up about their genuine thoughts and feelings and beliefs, we can develop a deeper connection with those people compared to the ones that really remain pretty surface level with their perfect image. And there's nothing wrong with those friends. Those are probably your fun friends. You probably can have a decent conversation with them about the world around us, but you're not getting into anything super in depth. It's only when you start to talk about your thoughts, feelings, and beliefs with another person that you start to develop a genuine connection. The same applies for you. That's vulnerability. That's why vulnerability is scary. Vulnerability isn't just saying something that's annoying that happened that maybe feels a little bit vulnerable, but it's vulnerable enough to create a little bit of connection, but it's still safe enough to control how people perceive you. It's still safe enough to control people's opinion of you. But being brave enough to lose that control a little bit is when you reap the reward of genuine connection. And when you don't, when you show yourself to those people, sooner rather than later, you realize who's in alignment with you and who's not, and who's supposed to be in your life and who's not. And there will be people that stay despite the stuff that you show, despite the imperfection. And those relationships are so much better than the ones that you are curating perfection and curating this identity and never actually feeling like you can be yourself because you don't have this genuine connection with them. It's really pretty surface level. So what, Sarah? I'm supposed to tell everybody my dirty little secrets, every little nitty-gritty fact about me that I don't want everybody to know in order to be considered real? No. Definitely not. It's not confessional oversharing, and I think that's how this is misinterpreted a lot of the time and how we screw ourselves over with it in the long run. It's emotional congruence. It's when you feel sad, you don't have to show up happy. When you feel anxious, you can say, hey, sorry, I'm feeling a little uncomfortable. Give me a minute. I'm just going to run to the bathroom quick. When you think, feel, or believe something, share it with the group instead of keeping it bottled up. When something bothers you, don't pretend to be unbothered. Obviously, you're not going to dump everything out there for everyone. Not everybody deserves access to you like that. There's some people that do, and they will get all of that. But that's very far and few between. You're lucky to have 1-2 people that really have genuine full access to you. So 100%, you're not dumping it all out there for everybody. But the goal is striking a balance between your private self and your public self and merging them in a way that honors each of them. We want to stop editing ourselves into acceptance by self-abandoning in order to be palatable, showing up in certain ways because you have a fear of being perceived, and by being yourself as much as possible so that if things go sideways, you know you showed up as authentically you. You can have your own back because you know that you would not have done anything different. I've got a couple more reflection prompts for you now that we've gotten this far in the process. So where do your words and actions align and where do they contradict? What would it look like to express yourself from the inside out instead of the outside in? It is so much more essential that we focus on the story we are telling ourselves when we want to develop our identity than the identity creation itself. Narrative awareness is going to make or break your ability to show up as the person you want to show up as because you are the author. You're not the character in the story. I feel like when we get on this tangent of trying to curate our identity, we're crafting a character like we're playing Sims. That's not what's happening. You are the author. You decide how you show up. And the way you show up in the way that you want, in the way that you would perceive as confident and cool and incredible, is actually your most authentic self. Those things that you pick out about your identity that you want to be more like call to you because they're already inside of you. And the way to present them in the way that is just the coolest, most chef's kiss way is by doing it authentically through your own lens. Because choosing the lens that you see yourself through changes the entire plot of the story. And that story is forever evolving. It's an ongoing draft. There's never going to be a finished product. If you want to genuinely practice this too, something that's like really helpful for me. Now, I am a person that creates content. So if this isn't your thing, maybe it's not your thing, but also fuck it, like try it, because what we're going to do is something for your eyes only. Like nobody will ever see it. You can delete it immediately after. But pulling out your camera and talking about literally anything, but talking into the camera, you don't have to rewatch it. Oh my God, don't rewatch it if you don't want to rewatch it. But being able to just freely say whatever you want into the camera does something to that gap, does something to this idea that you're showing up in private, nobody will ever see it, but you're doing something that your body and brain feels like could be your public self. And it helps really connect the two a lot and gets you more in alignment with who you authentically are when you create a space for yourself to merge those people without judgment, without the outside world impacting you. The most authentic thing you can do is live for yourself first. Honesty is magnetic. Self-expression adds excitement into your life without having to move mountains in order to add excitement into your life. And privacy holds so much power in order to get to know yourself. It's really not as complicated as we're making it. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to check out the rest of Wellish wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Talk to you guys next Monday. Bye.